You don't need to be anything to be truly amazing. So I had, the abusive father, I had a learning disability, had a severe stutter. I suffered from toxic stress. I had a whole bunch of white blotches all over my skin as a young kid. On top of the stuttering, on top of the, hair falling out of my head as a young kid. So I tried to hide in class, being, not only the only black kid in my class, but being, to me, I wasn't the smartest kid in class. I was the dumbest kid in my mind. So I was already insecure from my dad beating me in Buffalo. We moved to the small town of Brazil, Indiana. And my mom was working 3 jobs at the time. We lived in a government subsidized apartment that cost her $7 a month. So she was grinding, trying to make ends meet, right? Single mother. I copied all the way to my junior year in high school, just cheated on all these tests, and then I wanted to join the military. So I'm like, I want to join the military. I need to get out of this small town, tired of being called the N-word, tired of being the only, just tired of not fitting in. So one incident that happened to me is I came out of school and I had my brand new 1982 citation. And I came out and they said, N-word, we're gonna kill you. Spray paint all over it. My out was going to the military. So when I said, I'm gonna join the military, I went to the recruiter and he said, hey, you can take an ASVAB test. And when I heard test, I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? So a letter came in the mail a week after I failed my second ASVAB test. And it said pretty much, your son's gonna flunk out of school. My mom was like, hey, you know what, you can flunk out. That was her only advice to me because she was so stressed out from her personal life. And that's when I invented the accountability mirror. The accountability mirror was, my life, I blamed everybody. And a lot of people had a lot to do with my failures, but it's now mine to own. I had to start owning this myself because, my father wasn't coming back. The people that called me names weren't coming back. Nothing was coming back to save me. So I realized I had to save myself. And that's when I invented the accountability mirror, where I started putting down, I'm not smart. And I put a sticky note on the accountability mirror. I'm this, I'm that. And my mirror was full of sticky notes. And every day I went through and I tried to solve these problems. And the biggest problem it was trying to fit in. I was trying to fit in. I was blaming other people. I wasn't taking accountability for my own actions. I was doing all these things wrong. And as a 17-year-old trying to teach yourself this, it was difficult. And it snowballed from there, but I ended up passing that test, passed the ASVAB test. I was in the Air Force for about 4 years, and my big thing was I wanted to be Air Force pararescueman, some of the best medics on the planet Earth. As I got in the program, I started realizing that they had this thing called water confidence. Basically, they make you very uncomfortable underwater. So I realized at that point in time that I hated being underwater. I hated holding my breath. For 6 weeks, I hung in the program. I didn't sleep at all for fear of going back to the pool, for fear of drowning in my head. About 6 weeks in, we had this physical, and they realized I have sickle cell trait. Back in the day, I used to lie about whatever made me feel insecure. On my official paperwork out of pararescue training, it has David Goggins left on a medical. But the truth of the matter is, I left because I quit. I had to find a different job in the Air Force. In 4 years being in the Air Force, I gained 125 pounds. I get out of the Air Force and I'm working for a job spraying for cockroaches. 40 restaurants I was in charge of. I go in at nighttime and I spray. I would stop at Steak and Shake, get a large chocolate milkshake. I would go across the street to 7-Eleven, get a box of mini donuts. On the way home, I'll be popping donuts like Tic Tacs. I would get home, turn the TV on. This is my routine. Start taking a shower and listen to the TV as I'm showering. This particular day, I started hearing Navy SEALs, toughest training. And I was hearing it cut out between the water hitting my ears. So I came out of the shower, but it was Navy SEAL class, Bud's class, going through training. And it was nothing but water, and they're going through Hell Week, and they're freezing, and people are quitting left and right. And I sat down at 297 pounds, and I'm watching these amazing men going through training. At the end of the show, this commanding officer gives a speech. He says, we live in a society where mediocrity is often rewarded. These 22 men detest mediocrity. And I felt like, man, I have to now really start to overcome my fears, because I felt so small. Every day I had this haunting voice in my head saying, you're nothing, you're nothing. And I had to start conquering myself. And so to overcome all this, my bright idea was to try to become the one thing I was afraid of, a Navy SEAL. That day, I started calling recruiters up. And for 2 weeks, this happened. This recruiter laughed at me, that recruiter laughed at me, this recruiter said, there's no way. And every time I heard a no, I said, no, it's not meant to be. So I get back in my car and start driving back to work. And after I'd be at work for a few hours, man, I said, man, you can't give up that easy. So finally I said, this is my last call I'm gonna make. He was real busy. He said, just come on in. People don't walk in the office trying to be a Navy SEAL weighing 297 pounds. You walk in looking the way I look now. So he brought me back to a scale, and I remember looking in front of me was a height weight chart. For me, I'm 6'1". I could only weigh 191. I had to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months. So I went on this crazy routine and eating hardly nothing. And in less than 3 months, I lost 106 pounds. I'm the only person in Navy SEAL history to be in 3 Hell Weeks in 1 year. Hell Week is 130 hours of continuous training. I got into Hell Week, got double pneumonia, stress fractures, got rolled back to day 1, week 1. I broke my kneecap. So I reported back to day 1 of Navy SEAL training broken. And we had a guy die in my 3rd Hell Week. So Hell Week ended about 30 hours early. I have severe stress fractures. My knee is now blown up again. I knew I wasn't gonna get a chance to go back through Hell Week again. I made a decision to myself, there's no more quitting. So that's when I went and got duct tape. For the first 45 minutes, the duct tape hurt like hell. But after 45 minutes, my legs would go numb. Once stuff goes numb, you can't feel it. So that's how I went through the rest of 22 more weeks of Navy SEAL training. I was already at rock bottom my whole life. So when you know how rock bottom feels, you don't mind sleeping in the sewer. So at that point, once I realized that I already experienced the bottom, I no longer had fear of failure. But this took a long time. It's one like I woke up, oh, eureka, I got it. And I started realizing that the mind is the most powerful weapon that we have. Once I was able to quiet my mind and realize that I was really not cursed, but blessed to have so many tools that I never saw as tools. While growing up, so much hardship, only thing that can happen for me now is this victory. I chose these hard things to do because I wanted to learn how to callous my mind. Like the pull-up record, I did 4,030 pull-ups. But in preparation for that pull-up record, I did 67,000 pull-ups in 9 months. And what happens is your hands become calloused. Calloused hands protect you from hurting yourself on the pull-up bar. Right. So I realized, you know what? I have to learn to start callousing my brain. And I have a chapter in my book called Armored Mind. And Armored Mind it speaks of how we have to do things that suck every day, because that's how you start to strengthen your mind. So I said, you know what? Let me go on Google, and I Googled the 10 hardest events in the world. And what came up, #1 was this race called Badwater 135. It's a 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. So 130 degrees, 135 miles. I said, that's what I'm gonna do. I figured it had to be a stage race, like a 10-day race, something like that. No, it wasn't. It was a 1-day race. And so I called the race director up and said, hey man, I'm David Goggins. Chris Kostman goes, yeah, that's great. I go, I wanna do this race to raise money for a foundation. He goes, have you ever run 100 miles? I said, in 1 calendar year or what? He goes, yeah, to get into Badwater, you gotta run 100 miles in 24 hours or less to qualify. I said, you can't do 100 miles in 24 hours. I go, that's impossible. He goes, look, only way you can get in my race is to qualify. This is in November, on a Wednesday. There's only 2 more races I can do to qualify for the Badwater. And one happens to be on Saturday. I call him on a Wednesday, this race is on a Saturday. It's called a San Diego 1 Day. You have a 1-mile track, you run around a 1-mile track for 24 hours to see how many miles you can get. And I get all my gear. I get a blue lawn chair, Mileplex, and Ritz crackers. That's all I have for a 100-mile race. So I get my little seat set up, you know, I'm gonna see her every mile. I get some Mileplex and Ritz cracker, I keep on running. At mile 50, I start to feel the bones in my feet start to break. And at mile 70, I haven't gone to the bathroom not 1 time. And this is when I realized that a human being, you know, through all my 3 Hell Weeks, my Ranger School, my Air Force training, my childhood, everything I've done in my life, it has been very painful, very painful. This was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my entire life. I'm making humor of it, but this is what really made me realize that if you can shut all the noise out in your head and just all the crap that people are giving you, and you can focus on the task at hand and what you want to do, you honestly can do anything. I became very obsessed with finding out more, because I'm like, I came from this horrible human being in my mind to this person who's now amongst uncommon men. And I wanted to then become the most uncommon of uncommon men because of where I came from. It's almost like a live autopsy on myself. I'm like, wow, you don't need to be anything to be truly amazing.